And hello, Mr. Scott Evans. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm good. I have to say, it's not very often that I get nervous about having guests on this on this talk, but a little bit of anxiety today.
What's there to be nervous about myself? Come on, we've been
No,
friends for a
it's
long
just that
time.
like the roles are reversed because normally you're mentoring me in some way, shape, or form, and here I am today chatting to you.
I think, in fairness, Vanessa, I think we've both had a turn at mentoring each other.
Do you think
So,
so?
yeah, absolutely.
That's a bit of a
Absolutely.
compliment.
It's very genuine, sincere.
Do you like
We
my
all
background?
learn from each other every day.
It's very true. Do you like my background?
I do. Is that because it's going to rain this
No,
afternoon, or
no,
have you got a leak in your roof, or?
no, it's because you're always seeking opportunities and you're always pulling away from the pack.
I like it.
I
But
thought it was a bit.
I'd even go out on a rainy day without an umbrella because I believe the sun's going to come out in a couple of minutes' time.
Did you think that was going to happen yesterday?
Well, interestingly enough, I go walking every day. It's something I've been doing during COVID lockdown just to keep myself sane and also fit and give some clarity for time for thinking. And I ventured out when I thought the rain had stopped, and I got a little bit wet halfway through, but the sun came out and dried me out before I got home, so it was good.
So what's the city of Sydney like at the moment in lockdown without all the hustle and bustle of people and cars?
It's a little depressing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially the number of for lease signs that are up. You know, almost every third shop front has got a lease sign in it, and it's quite eerie when you're walking up George Street, and it doesn't really matter at what time of the day. It's a ghost town. So I can't wait for things to open up and see some form of normality come back to life. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nice being able to go for walks and enjoy the city without, huge tourism crowds. But, from a business perspective, for the poor businesses that have suffered, especially those that rely on the tourist trade, I can't wait to see the hustle and bustle back for their sake.
Well, after the news today, it doesn't look like it's going to be too far off, which is extremely exciting.
It's very exciting. It can't come soon enough.
So what are you going to do on the 11th of October?
Well, what am I going to do? Celebrate? It's been a pretty tough time. I mean, being a primary producer during these times is very challenging because it takes us 12 weeks to turn the tap off and also to turn it back on. So, I think we're in our 13th or 14th week of lockdown now. So, we've only just stopped producing full pre-COVID numbers in the last week or so, and we've already had to make decisions a few weeks ago of trying to predict when the market's going to open up again. So we've got the numbers coming through. So I'm definitely going to be celebrating when things open up and doing all that we can to help everybody else get back into business by having our products available and going back to servicing the industry as best we can. I mean, we've had to cut our number of delivery days. We've gone from 6 days to 3 days. So obviously I can't wait to turn that tap back on. So no, it's certainly exciting.
Well, let's come back to the game farm story, but I want to explore and understand how you have achieved and made it to the position that you're in today insofar as trading and owning game farm and what that journey has been like. And I guess the best question to start with is, how did it all start? Were you born an entrepreneur? Like, were you always out, trading your lollipops or anything exciting like that?
It's actually a very interesting question, Vanessa, because from a very young age, I always had to be kept busy. And I was never driven by money. I was just driven by putting myself outside of my comfort zone and trying new things. And from a very young age, I had a paper run, and I used to meet some really interesting people along the way. And even at, I think I was 9 years of age 10 years of age when I started that paper run. And I used to walk a couple of kilometres doing the paper run, and then the owner of the newsagent would pick me up and drive me home. And I'd finish at the bottom of Spears Road, North Rocks, where there was a nursing home. And I'd have to go through all the industrial areas of Loyalty Road. But there was quite a number of retired people on my paper run route. And I used to do deals with them where if they bought a week's worth of papers off, or paid me up front for a week's worth of papers, I'd give them a discount. And this wasn't even something I was allowed to do, but it was just something that I don't know where I picked it up from or where the idea came from. But to me, that securing that order and that loyalty, and then providing that service. And I remember a lot of these older gentlemen would say to me, well, how do I know if I pay you for a week's papers, you're going to be here and give me my paper every day? And I said, well, that's up to me to earn your trust, but I promise you put your trust in me, and I'll ensure that you get looked after. And they'd tell their friends on the route, and it worked. So I was able to get this loyalty, and then they'd start to ask me about these other sorts of magazines, whether it was the Rugby League Week or something on boats or whatever it may be. So it was very interesting.
So you were value adding your paper run.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I did was, we lived near a golf course. So on a Saturday and a Sunday, I used to go and sit in this park, and the golf course boundary fence ran alongside this park, and the golfers would hit their golf balls out, and then I'd sell them back to them. But it would be at a great discount, well below what it would cost them to buy a new ball, and they'd lost their ball if I wasn't there to give it back to them anyway. So, and when I'd go home for lunch, I'd be gone for an hour, and by the time I'd come back, there'd be 4 or 5 golf balls in the long grass that I'd find. So I'd find them, I'd take them home, clean them all up, and sell them. I got a little bit too big for my boots one weekend, and those old when you're at the sporting events, and they've got the thing around your neck and the little box when they sell the cornettos and the bag of chips.
Oh, yes,
like
yes.
Well, I had one of my friends that was far handier with tools than I was make me one of those, and I filled it up with golf balls, all the different brands, and I actually ventured up to the car park of the golf club. And as the golfers were arriving for their round of golf or finishing for their round of golf, putting their clubs either in their boot or taking them out, I was walking around car to car selling these golf balls, until the pro came out one time with a big golf club, waving at me, telling me to get out of his car park because he couldn't work out why he was losing all his golf ball sales.
You lost all his sales. That's funny. A bit of competitive advantage there, I would think.
Exactly.
So what happened? I can't believe how many good careers start with a paper run round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because you meet a lot of very interesting people. You're working for a business that the operator actually works in the business, and you're working alongside them, and you get to see how they operate and what they do. But no, it was a really good way of breaking into the workforce, and it was something you could do before you're under the age of 14. Maybe back then you still weren't meant to, but I did.
You've always been driven. So what happened? What did you want to do when you were younger? What was it that you wanted to do with your life?
To be quite honest, Vanessa, I really didn't have a clear direction as to what I wanted to do. My father was a professional businessman, and he was always away, and we didn't get to see him a lot because he traveled overseas. And in fact, I was just going back quickly. I was born in Sydney, and at the age of 2, my father was relocated, and as a family, we left. And I was 2. My sister was only 6 months, and Craig wasn't born yet. And we went to the US. And then from the US, after a couple of years, we went to the UK, and that's when my brother Craig was born. So he's a Pommy. And then we ended up in South Africa. So before I was 10 years of age, I'd lived in 4 continents. So the ability to accept change. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I love sport, and I did really well at sport. I was an average student at school, mainly because a lot of what they were teaching us, it frustrated me. I get bored very quickly, and I just couldn't see the sense in a lot of what they were trying to teach us. And I guess I started off keeping myself busy and finding ways to learn. One of the best things that my parents did for me, my father was a golfer, and he introduced me to the golf club, and I was a member from the age of 12. They called them a cadet back in those days. And I had the ability to play with different people each week. And I used to play with my father quite often, but I'd also play with other CEOs and managing directors of companies, and I really enjoyed their company. And as you can imagine, when you live overseas from a young age, and your dad's a senior executive in large multinational businesses, you get to meet a lot of very interesting people, and you're always I guess I was mature well beyond my years, because I was always told every time we had somebody over, we had to behave. And because we traveled so much, you were always meeting people from dad's work, for mum to be able to meet friends, etc. And I just really enjoyed playing golf and meeting these business owners and learning so much from them. And I guess the more that I spoke to them and the more exposure I got, the more I was interested in business. But my father was very, very strict and had very high expectations. And I really upset him when I decided to leave school at year 10. And I said, Dad, this just isn't for me. I feel like I'm wasting time. There's so much more I want to do. And he said, look, son, as long as you've got a job, he said, you don't have my blessing, but I can't stop you. It's your life. I'd love you to finish. And so I got a job. I had 3 jobs, actually. So I came back to Dad and said, you told me to get 1 job. I've got 3. And I decided to start off with the Commonwealth Bank. And that was a really interesting experience. And I was only there a couple of years, but I worked my way up to number 1 teller. So again, I used to.
So you actually started on the teller, as a teller?
Well, I actually didn't start there. I started off in the back office and processing checks and deposits and things like that. I also did the school runs with the Dolomite banking. I don't know if you remember the Dolomite bank accounts with your kids. So that's the area that I sort of started with. And then once I'd earned my stripes, you start off, and we had about 6 tellers at the Carlingford branch of Commonwealth Bank where I started. And I started off at number 6 or 7 and then worked my way up to number 1 teller, which was pretty prestigious back in those days. But that was the gun job, because you got to meet all the business owners and the senior managers of the business who used to come in and do their banking. And I also got transferred to Epping branch at that stage. So, the Epping Hotel was one of our big customers. I remember they'd come in on a Monday morning after a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday trade. Now I'm going back to 1986, 87, and we'd have $350,000 to $450,000 to count every Monday morning from their takings. And
did they have the machines back then?
No, they didn't.
You had to do it all like with your finger.
Yeah, exactly. And with someone like that, a customer the size of that, you'd have somebody else that would come in and help you. But again, I was just surrounded by business people. And then getting back to the golf course, I met this managing director, and I got to know him over a couple of years. He was actually somewhat more of a family friend as well. And he said to me, Scott, you're wasting your time in the bank. I'd love you to come and work for me. And he was working for an international trading company. That company was called Craig Mostyn. The Craig Mostyn Group are a very diversified business and quite heavily weighted in the food industry. And so I went and met with him, and we sat down and spoke about it. And he had an opportunity in the mushroom industry, actually. So that was my entry into the food business. I took over the responsibility for a German peat moss that was sold into the mushroom industry. And at 17 years of age, I got a company car, had a great opportunity, and I went out there and met the mushroom industry, and that was a really good grounding and a really good hardworking bunch of people, and they were vertically integrated in what they did, and I saw it really interesting. And then we built. Well, they had a nuts and dried fruit division as well. So I ended up getting involved in that area. And that was interesting, because that introduced me to the Greeks and the Italians and the Lebanese that were very big in the importing of the fruits and nuts and the dried fruits, etc. And then after about 2.5 years, the managing director left that business and went to another business. And he was having troubles getting the support of the staff, because it was quite a change, and some of the senior people in that business expected to get the top job, and they didn't. They brought someone in from outside. And he gave me a call one day and he said, Scott, that opportunity I gave you a few years ago at Craig Mostyn, I'd love it if you could repay me the favor and come and help me out at this new business. And I really didn't want to leave Craig Mostyn, because I had a really good rapport with the Mostyn family, and had provided me so many great opportunities. But I owed it to Dennis Foster, was the gentleman's name, because he gave me this opportunity. So I went across there, and we set up a food division, and specialising in again, nuts and dried fruits, but also we branched out into potato flakes, many different items, and some great stories there. But maybe that's for another time. And we built that division up. And then about 18 months later, he left and went to another company. And that's when I got tapped on the shoulder by another import-export business. And I went across there. I was about 21 at this stage, and they provided me some opportunities to travel overseas. So I was traveling to Europe on an annual basis, to the Anuga food show in Cologne, Germany, which is, you know, one of the most amazing shows you could ever see. And then every second year it was Cial in Paris. And you know, the producers that I met, the importers, it gave me a real passion for not only food, but just that international trading. And this was well before the internet and emails. I mean, I used to communicate on a telex machine. You know, when the fax machine came, it was just like, holy crap, how do you put a bit of paper in here and it comes out the other end? And you fast forward 30 years and have a look at where technology is today. So what really hooked me.
That is something, you are quite innovative in your thoughts as well. And you're always searching for better ways of being able to automate a process, right?
Well, I think it's the future. And, you know, one of the biggest challenges we have in the food industry, the hospitality industry, is people. And that's going to be the biggest challenge opening up, whether it's primary producers like ours that need the staff in our factories or on our farms, or whether it's restaurateurs needing front of house or back of house. It's going to be a real challenge. So, you know, automation and having a look at, you know, how we can improve things and streamline is going to be really important. But getting back to the food trading days, what really hooked me is I got an inquiry from a company on the 3rd floor of a building in New York City, and they wanted cranberry beans. And we used to sell in 20-foot container loads. And so they gave me this inquiry, and I went out through telex machines and the research that I did as to who the main producers were. And believe it or not, but I found another trader on the 15th floor of the same building in New York as to where I got the inquiry on the 3rd floor from, bought the container of cranberry beans off him, made $5,000 US on the deal, never saw the goods, got the documents sent to Sydney, took off their invoice, put on my invoice and sent it out. I thought, if this is how to do business, I'm in.
I was just going to say, and the world was created.
The trading world was created, and you know, I've never really looked back from there, and it just showed me. You know, I guess it was finding solutions. I've always been a very solution-driven person. I mean, you know, never say something can't be done, and I love a challenge, and being able to build bridges between a producer and an end user or an importer, and find a solution for them, which in turn was a solution for their customers, was something I really enjoyed. So I spent a number of years in that industry and traveled the world extensively, so young, but with some really good mentors and people that have been doing this for a long time. I was, in fact, 20 years younger than anybody else on the same level of management that I was on at the time. And that's when I was approached by my father-in-law, who wasn't my father-in-law at the time, but I was dating his daughter. And he asked me whether I'd be interested in helping him in the game farm business. He was an incredibly hardworking man. He came out to Australia in the late 50s. He was part of the Snowy River scheme, had a real passion for hunting, but he was a cabinet maker by trade. And once he finished on the Snowy Mountain scheme, he came back to Sydney and he made a lot of furniture for a lot of you know, great restaurants. And unfortunately, one Christmas Eve, he had a huge fire and lost all his stock and all the orders he had it was meant to be delivered that afternoon and evening. And you know, he as a hobby, he used to breed game birds, and in his backyard, Avery at Bondi, he had a range of game birds, and they were mainly for family consumption and friends of family and you know, friends of friends. And it grew to what it was when I met him. So I used to sit around the dinner table and see the Bento family and the pressures that they were under, and I could see how much hard work that they'd put into this business, and the infrastructure was there. It was still a very small business. It was, you know, turning over $1 million. I think they had $1 million worth of debt at that time as well. And there were many family members. There was Olivia, my mother-in-law, Arminio's wife, my brother-in-law Mark, Linda, and you know, they'd work. They woke up. And so much so that if they didn't wake up by 6 o'clock, Arminio would go and wake them up just so he could get them out there. And Linda would help select the eggs to go into the incubators, and Mark would help his father on the farm, and then they'd process them together. And I saw this family, and I thought it'd be a real shame that if they didn't, work get to the next level. So I saw it as an opportunity, being very young. I was very wary of family business because I'd been around a few family businesses, and I can't say it was my greatest desire, but I felt an obligation to help. And I also saw it as a great opportunity for me to learn, because at 23 years of age, I had the responsibility of running divisions, but I'd never had exposure of running an entire business. So that was my entry to the game farm business, and that was in that was the 1st of July 1993. So at 23 years of age, Linda and I had only been married.
How old you were when you came into the game farm business? 23.
23, yes. And Linda and I had only been married 4 months, so it was a pretty big risk being married 4 months, coming into the in-laws business. And but I spent the first 6 months learning all aspects of it, whether it was going out with the drivers and meeting the customers, whether it was spending time in the factory, on the farm. Back in those days, it was a lot easier because everything was on the one site: the processing, the incubation, the farming, the breeding, et cetera, et cetera. And I basically, it was a 6 months of just learning as much as I could. I started off as the general manager. I worked very closely with Armenio and Olivia, and we put processes and systems in place. And it was a really exciting time. And at 23 years of age, I was young. I had no fear. I was full of enthusiasm and passion and energy, and we had a long.
You loved a challenge.
And loved the challenge, and it was always going to be a challenge when you're dealing with a European hot-blooded family of Portuguese origins, and we weren't always going to see our way. But the deal that I had with Armenio was that I would come in and I would help him put in the systems and the processes and take the pressure off him day to day, on the understanding that we were working towards a sale. Like, it wasn't going to be my lifelong career, because I really enjoyed the international. I say trading, and trading's not a fair word. That's how it started, but it's become more about brand building and finding solutions for producers and importers. But that was where my passion was. But I felt I was young enough to come in here, get this experience, run a business, and help a family that had worked incredibly hard after arriving from Portugal with an empty suitcase and a shirt on his back, and together with Olivia, building the infrastructure of what it was, a business that had a really good opportunity. So we did that. But then after 2 or 3 years, the business started to do well. The pressure was off Armenio. We were growing, and things were looking really good. And he'd sort of changed his tune. He didn't want to sell it anymore. And it was like, Armenio, that's not what we agreed to. This is not my real passion. And he said, oh, okay, but no, why don't we just try for a little while? And it really came to light that my way of doing things were different to Armenio's way of doing things. He was very old school, and he couldn't understand things like workers' compensation and people having, our employees having morning tea or lunch. Like, if he was working with an employee back in the day and they said it was time for morning tea, so what do you mean? You've only been working for 3 hours. He'd work 16-hour days without a drink. And he just didn't understand why employees didn't want to do that. So it was difficult running a business with somebody of that nature, albeit, his work ethic and his passion for quality and Olivia's passion for quality, gave me the motivation to continue. So anyway, we agreed to put the business on the market. And we also had a key employee, Carl Fraser, who's had a long history, 30 plus years with Game Farm, that was with Game Farm for about 3-4 years before I started. And then, of course, my brother-in-law, Mark, and Linda, my wife, Armenio's daughter. So it was a real family affair. And Carl and Mark and I found out very quickly that even if there was a buyer for the Game Farm business, that they wanted to tie us up for 3 to 5 years as part of the deal. And it was like, well, hey, I didn't sign up for that either. I don't mind doing the hard yards for my family, but doing the hard yards for somebody else when I could be doing something for myself. So then Armenio turned around one day and said, well, why don't you guys buy the business? And to be honest, I'd never really thought about it until that point in time. And we'd enjoyed, double-digit growth year on year. And cut a very long story short, because as I said, 1st of July 1993 is when I started, and we actually brokered a deal to buy the business from the founding generation in April 2004. So it was 10, 11 years between what was meant to be 3 years. So the good thing about going to market was we were able to identify what the business was worth at an arm's length transaction. So that took away a lot of the emotion of coming up with a valuation. And we did a deal with Armenio and Olivia, and they were very kind to assist us with vendor financing, because at that stage, we were still paying off our houses and building families, and so we had that support, and we paid that back over the next 5 years. And it was really, really interesting, because I gave Game Farm everything I had, every ounce of my brain power, my work ethic. I physically didn't think I had anything more to give. But when you get ownership, you grow arms and legs. And what Carl, Mark, and Linda and I were able to do with that business over the next 5, 6, 7 years was amazing, and just the growth that we had. And there was a lot happening in the industry of the poultry industry in relation to Newcastle disease and avian influenza, and we really had old McDonald's farm. We had one site, everything was done on that one site, and there was lots of risks. So that's when we started spreading out, and we had the Merriwall property, and we transferred the hatchery and the breeding operation there. We went into contract growing with our quail production. We contracted out our pheasants and our guinea fowl. So we went and found out who were the best of the best farmers. We then sold them our genetic breeding stock. We then gave them our feed rations and formulas and our know-how, how to raise them, and the specifications for what we wanted them. And in most cases, we still processed them so we could control the quality. And that's when we were able to free ourselves up and to really grow and take the business further.
It's been an amazing story. I mean, we go back to Olivia and Armenio, and can you share the story of how the relationship began with someone like Tetsuya? And it's not because it's Tetsuya, it's just the emotional connection and just that appreciation for both sides. I love this story.
Yeah, it's a really good story, Vanessa. It's obviously Armenio coming out as an immigrant and had nothing behind him. He was in debt to his parents just for his the cost of coming out to Australia. So he knew what it was like to not speak the language when you arrived, to have no money, and to be able to find your way. And he ran into Tetsuya when Tetsuya was working for Tony Bilson, and Tetsuya back in those days was washing the dishes. And Armenio met him, and they formed a relationship. And every time Armenio would come in late of an evening to make deliveries, he and Tetsuya would talk. And Tetsuya started his own restaurant, and he came to Armenio and said that he really wanted to support Game Farm and Game Farm products, and the business started. And Tetsuya would have a really good couple of nights, and then he wouldn't have too many for the next couple of nights, and it was really inconsistent. And Armenio just pulled him aside one day and said, "Tetsuya, you believe in yourself, you can achieve anything." And Armenio's got this saying that what man can think, man can achieve, there is no end. And he instilled that in Tetsuya. And he said to Tetsuya, he said, "Look, Tets," he said, "I know how hard it is. You're supporting me already with my products." He said, "You pay me when you can. There's no pressure. There's no expectation. You build your business, and I know your success will be my success." And Tetsuya was very, very appreciative and so humbled by that gesture. And he grew his business. And not only on the back of that, there was other people. And obviously Tetsuya had an amazing skill and talent as we know it today. But back in those days, Armenio could see the skill that he had. And like Armenio, he just needed a break. And it was probably 12 months before the restaurant was in a business to start paying off its bills. And it was quite a lot of money back in those days in the early 80s or mid 80s. And the best part of this whole story is that today, Tetsuya still remembers that. And, he will always say how grateful he is to Armenio for the support that he gave him. And to use Tetsuya's words as a testimony on our corporate video is that maybe if it wasn't for Armenio and Game Farm, that, he wouldn't be here today. I think that's a very humble statement, because we all know what an amazing gift he is and the contribution that he's made to the industry, not just in Australia, but worldwide. And I guess Arminio and Game Farm were just very, very lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And Arminio knew exactly where Tetsuya was in his life, and saw himself in that position several years earlier. And the friendship was nurtured from that point forward. And Arminio and Tetsuya are still very close today. And whenever they get together, it's a really good chat. I've actually seen them with tears in their eyes a couple of times, remembering the good old days. So it's a very valued relationship, and it's great to see two people that immigrated out to Australia and have been so successful in their own rights.
And I think that it's a testament to the Game Farm story, because that's what it is. The Game Farm is a business, sure, but it just has such a strong foundation and such a beautiful story. And the fact that it's in the backyard of Sydney, we want to champion local produce, and we want to be able to support local producers. I mean, you're a fully vertically integrated business.
Yes, and I think that's our advantage. Obviously, it's really important for the chefs to have a story, and to be able to understand the background behind where products come from. And it's a real shame, the fact that the industry is struggling, like a lot of industries, to get apprentices coming through. And there's nothing better for us than to open our facilities. And obviously that hasn't been possible during COVID, but you were very much involved in that whole concept when you were with us, Vanessa. And it's a great initiative to be able to really bring people in and understand that protein just doesn't turn up in the butchery or the back dock in a vacuum bag and a box, that there's a lot of love and care and infrastructure and investment that goes into nurturing these amazing proteins. So yeah, it's great that we've got a story to tell, and we're also in control from the breeding stock to the fertile eggs to the incubation and hatching of day-old chicks to the growing to the processing to the distribution, both domestic and export. It's and also to our employees, it offers a lot of opportunities as well, because we're really 20 businesses in one. So whether you want a background in marketing or sales or admin or finance or farming or production or nutrition, there's so much opportunity within our business for people to develop and grow because of the diversified nature of it.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what really excites me about the business that we're in and the industry that we're in. It's a very complex industry because there's so many moving parts, and it's that challenge that really motivates and inspires me. And I'm certainly no expert across any given aspect of our business, but there's not a part of our business that I don't understand and that I'm not fully aware of the basics. But my philosophy in life is surround yourself with much smarter people than you are, and just be the best at getting the best out of them. And I've really enjoyed that journey. I love to learn, and that's why I said it wasn't a flippant throwaway line that I said to you at the onset of this discussion. Our times together, I learn an incredible amount from you, your networks and the relationships that you have, and that's another key in life. You're only as good as your relationships and your reputation. Morals, ethics, values are so important to me, and I could probably be 100 times bigger as a businessman if I was willing to go down the grey line. But it's absolute black and white with me, and I've got to put my head on the pillow every night and feel really good about what we do. And it's they're values that we instill in who we are as a business. But the things that you've taught me over the years and the people that you've introduced me to, and that's where I just love this industry. Just the characters that you meet, and passion. Passion is so important for me. I mean, passion is like my blood and oxygen. I can't be around negative people. I don't mind being around negative people because I see there's a challenge of trying to turn them around and getting them to see the glass.
That becomes exhausting after a while.
But after a while, if you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, I'll move on pretty quickly. But I just love positive people. I love people that are passionate. I love people that jump out of bed every day and enjoy what they do. And I've met some amazing people. I've seen some amazing things. I mean, I've been to the boondocks out the back of Qingdao, China, where I literally walk into a room of 500 locals in a village, and I'm the only Westerner that they've probably seen in years. And they look at me like I'm a Martian from outer space. Or whether it's we did a fair bit of work in in Chile, and we went out on their boats to have a look at the half shell scallops that we used to import into both Australia and export into many different markets in Asia Pacific and the Middle East. And I was a pretty fussy eater as a kid, but I had to learn very quickly in my young adult life you can't sell something unless you believe in it, and you certainly can't sell something if you're not willing to eat it yourself.
Yeah.
So, here I was eating, sashimi grade scallops with the roe on straight out of the depths of the water in Chile, and whether it was even sea urchin roe, uni, we used to trade a lot of that as well. I've been into the depths of India and developing with very strategic partners who were far more visionary than I was at the time, and they'd grown up in it, and the things that they opened my mind to. And this was a particular family that I met, Helene, who you've met in Singapore, who was the managing director of Indaguna, and they were customers of game farms. And Helene introduced me to her mother and her sister, who ran a similar business in Hong Kong. And Helene and her sister Irene had been in the food business since they were 3 or 4 years of age, because their mother was in the business, and she used to travel with them, delivering truffles and caviar, and from Hong Kong to Thailand to wherever it may have been. And they had a passion beyond belief, and what they didn't know about the food industry wasn't worth knowing. And some of the things that they've opened my eyes to, and the journeys that we've been on, white truffle hunting in Alba, Italy, and just some amazing,
just extraordinary,
just the chefs that we've met, and that we've been able to meet, the hotels that we've been into. I remember when Dubai was starting up, Helene and her mother and her sister, we met up in Singapore one time, and they said, look, we've really got a passion. We see there's a great opportunity in Dubai. We'd like to set up a business in Dubai. Would you like to be part of it? And I had to think about it, because I had a lot on my plate at the time, but I saw it as a great opportunity. I was also very humbled, because these were, 3 very successful women that really didn't normally invite male businessmen into their lives. They believed it was women power, and we came together and went.
I actually love the way that you had met your match with Helene, I have to say.
I more than met my match, I can tell you. She challenged me beyond comprehension, but again, it was living by my principles, because I've always said that whenever you feel comfortable, if you truly want to be the very best you can be at anything you do in life, you've got to constantly put yourself outside of your comfort zone. And Helene was a real challenge, in the sense that she was so knowledgeable, so driven, so passionate. I really had met the female version of myself, and it just gave me more motivation and drive to do more and more. And Helene was really, really strong on the customer side, and I was really, really strong on the supplier side. And there were so many great Australian producers that were very good at producing high quality proteins with so much passion and quality, but they didn't necessarily know what it took to take the products offshore. And that's where I saw a great opportunity to do that as well. And we went across to Dubai, and we spent 12 months researching the market in Dubai, and then we decided to set up Indaguna Dubai. So I was lucky enough to be a founding shareholder in that business, and I looked after the admin and the finance and administration, and Helene looked after the sales and marketing. And Helene's mum and sister were more passive investors, and it was really something that Helene and I drove. And it was really exciting. I'll never forget that one of our benchmarking studies was to go to the Burj Al Arab, and that was the only 7-star hotel in the world at that point in time. And we went there to their Sunday brunch lunch, which was meant to be the cream of the cream. And Helene and I left there really disappointed, and we thought, if this is the best that Dubai's got to offer, they're looking for a business like Indaguna and what we do, and the brands that we can bring in from Australia and from the US and Europe and the rest of it. And that was our motivation. And that was a really, really exciting journey, and just again met so many great people along the way. So I really had my hands full with the trading business, with the game farm business.
I was going to say,
the buyer business.
How did you manage both? Because game farm is a full-on business in itself, and then to have the internet. Did you sleep?
I did, but I slept very well. I didn't need a lot of sleep, because by the time I got to sleep, I was really tired. But it was
You're
the
working in
human
different
body.
time zones as well.
Yeah, well, I actually, for 25 years, I spent between 10 and 14 days a month away for that period of time. And for 12 of those years, a lot of it was in Dubai, especially in the first couple of years when we were starting the business. We originally aligned ourselves with a well-established business that was there. They were in the dried goods, and we were coming in high premium proteins. And we saw a great opportunity to merge. Unfortunately, it was a good stepping stone, but they didn't share the same values and ethics and morals that we did, and we had to go our separate ways, which forced us to become completely independent, which was really good. But it was a disappointing experience to go through. But to answer your question, I mean, we had good people at Game Farm. Carl had been with us for quite some time by then, and he was heavily involved in both the operations and sales. Linda was very much involved in the office area. By the time we started the Dubai business, Mark had decided to leave the business. He'd always had a passion in IT and software development, and he'd worked for alongside his father for many years, and I guess he wanted an opportunity to go outside of the family business. I'd had that opportunity before coming into Game Farm. Mark hadn't, and he saw that was a great opportunity. But I should say that when we did buy the business from Arminio and Olivia, being the founding generation, Mark was included in that acquisition, and to this day is a shareholder and a director, and brings a lot of valuable contribution to the board and to the decisions that we make, because he was living and breathing it from being old enough to walk, and his contribution is very insightful. So I've always had really good people around me. Yes, my passion and my drive and my willingness to take calculated risk has certainly helped the business grow and flourish. But absolutely, I could not have done it without the people that I've had around me and the support. It's been a team effort, and and also the people that have worked for the business outside of the shareholders and the directors and what they've brought to the business. And if I meet somebody and I really like them, they earn my trust and respect from day one. And I know that's different from a lot of people. You've got to earn their respect and trust before you get it. But if I really like you and you're passionate and you're positive, I can't get enough of you. And I'll always find an opportunity as to how we can work together in one way or another, and look for those synergies. And through that philosophy, I've met a lot of amazing people that have helped us keep the dream alive and continue the business adventures.
So tell me, you're working in the international market. You're obviously seeing a lot of amazing produce products. How do you know where to draw the line so far as what to introduce? Can you import it into Australia as well? Any of the products?
Not always, but sometimes you can. I guess I've been very conscious of not falling into the trap of where you try to be everything for everyone. And whilst I like the diversity and I like to be able to have the product offering, you've got to do it right. So I've been very selective of the brands that I've taken on. And that's the other benefit of Game Farm that's helped me fulfill my passion for the international side of the business is we get to meet a lot of boutique, bespoke, high premium producers of great products. Whether it's through, we bank with National Australia Bank, and they have a very strong agribusiness division, and they have a lot of functions where they invite primary producers, and you get to meet same like-minded people. And I get to meet a lot of brands that way. And with my Commtrade global business, represents about 12 brands. And over the years, we would have knocked back far more brands than we've taken on, only because I treat every single brand that we take responsibility for as if it was my own. And if I can't give it the energy and the passion it needs, we don't take it on. So, whether it's premium full-blood Wagyu beef, such as my Eurostation, and you've met Scott De Bruin, he's incredibly passionate. It's a great product. They're vertically integrated as well. Or whether it's the Tajima crossbred Wagyu and their Grange brand of beef. I've known Peter Andrews for a long time, being in this industry from Andrews Meats, and we were sitting down one Christmas talking about the business and what I was doing export, and Peter was really interested about expanding into export markets and developing their own brands, and I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time and got the exclusive rights to the Tajima brand and the Grange beef brand. We've got a quality octopus, Fremantle octopus out of Western Australia, which is unique to that coastline, and that's in some of the best menus in the US and across Asia and the Middle East. And Bangalore sweet pork, Amelia Park grain-fed lamb. So really good, interesting brands with somewhat of a point of difference. But you can never lose face of the fact that you've got to be current and you've got to be finding solutions for what the customer wants. We can share with them our knowledge of our international travels. We can share trends. We can give them ideas. But chefs are very creative people in their own rights, and all we can do is to share our experience and find out what they're looking for. I've listened to a few of your interviews in the last the last week, just to get a feel for what's discussed and how they roll. And it's really important that I don't see myself as a salesperson either. I like to think that I'm very passionate, and I like to find solutions for people. And at a very young age, my boss said to me one time, he said, look, it's not about going in and getting a sale every time. It's about taking the time to really get to understand not only the people that you're dealing with, but their business and what is it that makes them tick, and what is it that's going to make them succeed? How can you contribute to their success by feeding into providing them the tools or the solutions that they need? So more often than not, I'd be more excited that if I left a business or a sales meeting with an inquiry, with an opportunity, something that was new. And I'd say, what is your biggest challenge? What is it that you wish you could find a solution for? And they were the types of things I'd take away and come back with a solution. And it may not always have been the perfect solution. And it may not have always been about selling them something. It could have been an operational solution or a problem that they had, because most kitchens were the smallest part of the establishment, so they had more front of house so they can have more customers in. But the more demand for the customers, the kitchen never grew. So whether it was multiple deliveries, whether it was whatever it was, we just had to find solutions to work, and that's where those opportunities came from. Just I guess traveling to trade shows and really seeing what was going on. I mean, the Anuga trade show in Cologne, it was massive. You had to do your research before you went there. You got the catalogue and you really had to focus down on what you wanted to see, because you could not see 40% of the show if you spent every hour it was open for the days it was open,
Really?
walking from store to store. It was massive. And Sal Paris was a little bit smaller than the Anuga fair, but it was equally as good. And then there was the Food and Hotel Asia trade shows in Singapore, which you and I have been to together. And I'd been there many times. And as well as the Gulf food in the Middle East, and these were great opportunities because chefs would travel from around the world as well as within the region, and chefs are very transient people, as you know, and they don't only go from hotel to hotel or restaurant to restaurant, but they also travel internationally. And that's why Dubai was so exciting at the time when we were opening up there, because Dubai had all the money and they had the ritziest and glitziest.
They didn't care about food costs.
Hotels. There was food costs weren't a problem. And they were paying great money to entice people to come across. So it was amazing the number of times that I'd walk into a kitchen and you'd run into somebody from Australia or a customer that you'd had in Japan, or it's a really big worldwide industry, but it's a very small community. When you talk about where somebody had been previously, and you say, oh, do you know this person and that person? That opened doors in itself. And it's just a great industry to be part of. I went from being a very fussy, picky eater as a kid to somebody that's hugely adventurous. And I heard you ask one of your guests a week or two ago what was the weirdest or the strangest thing that they'd ever eaten, and then you sort of rephrase that because you didn't want to offend any of the producers of those weird and wild proteins. But the weirdest thing that I've ever experienced, and I was very, very young, it was in my first trip to China, and the gentleman that was hosting us said to me that they had something very special to greet me with for dinner as a sign of their gratitude for the travel. And here I am, like an absolute nobody, so young. The only thing I had lots of was no fear and lots of confidence. But these guys are making you, they're so hospitable and looking after you. And we went to this restaurant, and the menu was a live menu. So you literally got up from the table and you went outside, and everything was either in tanks or in cages.
Oh,
And seriously, there was not a single species, and there were species of moving, crawling, climbing things that I'd even never seen in my life. And you had to choose what you wanted from this menu. And that was an amazing experience. But what blew me away was about halfway through the dinner, everyone stopped and this person came in with, you know, those walkers that young kids are in before they walk, and it was like that with a cloth over the top of it. And it came in underneath the table, and then something came off, like the big tablecloth came off the top of it, and then everybody went straight in with their chopsticks. And I had no idea what was going or what happened. They passed me the chopsticks, and it's the only time and it was very early on, it's the only time I've refused to eat something. I'd never do it again. I was just too young back in those days to understand how, I guess, disrespectful it was not to do it. But they were eating monkeys' brains, live monkeys' brains.
Oh.
So when I heard you ask the weirdest thing the other day, I think that would be pretty hard to beat. And I can't say that I tried it, but since then I've tried just about everything else. And in some of the areas of China that I've traveled to, and India, I can only imagine some of the things that I've eaten. But thankfully, I've got an iron stomach and I've lived to tell the story. But yeah, from a young kid that was very picky and fussy, there's not too many things that I won't try at least once these days.
You have an extraordinary life in the amount of international travel that you are able to do, and the people that you're able to meet. Talk to me about Quail. And I have to say, one of the proudest moments of when and it was before I was involved in Game Farm, was on the cusp of it, was actually being able to get Quail onto menus in clubs.
Yes.
Because everyone's looking for a point of difference. And, you know, you guys have all of the value-added cuts of quail that are just beautiful, you know, whether it's the breasts, the tulips, whatever it may be. But they are just so adaptable to all menus, right?
Absolutely. And that was another challenge that, that we really set ourselves, that quail can be so versatile. It can be used across so many different platforms, and it's so simple and easy to cook. But there's this real fear about it being a game bird. And I mean, if I had $1 for every time somebody told me, yeah, but you got to have 10 to have a meal, or they're full of bones, they're difficult to eat, but people can eat a whole fish, or people have no problems going and cooking a whole duck or a whole chicken, but they had this problem with quail. And it really surprised me when I started with Game Farm how few people of the Australian population ever tried quail before. I mean, without exaggeration, I would say that 9.5 out of 10 of the Australian population have never tried quail. And that was back in the early 90s. Obviously, I'd like to think we've done a pretty good job of improving those numbers today. But what was even better was that 8 out of 10 people that tried it for the first time loved it. They were blown away with how tasty it was. They couldn't, when we do an in-store cooking demonstration, or we're at a trade show, and people would come and see you pull the raw product out of the product, see how quickly and easy you seasoned it or marinated it, and then even quick how you cooked it, and it was ready for tasting. And they thought that we'd pre-prepared it, or they were just blown away with the flavour of it. The only reason that we didn't get 9.5 out of 10 people instead of 8 that loved it was because there were quite a lot of people that had quail as kids, as pets in their aviaries and things like that, and they couldn't see it, couldn't take themselves to trying it. But it really saw a surge. And we took quail from back in the early 90s from 20,000 birds a week to its peak. We were up at 65,000 quail a week. And
I mean, that's huge.
It sounds huge, but when you look at the Australian population, it's not that huge. I mean, you're talking 3.5 million birds a year in a population of 25 million people. But at the same time, our products have always been about specialty products, specialty game and poultry. We hold, in my mind, an important part of a menu, but a small part of a menu. I mean, we're never going to be the staple of the beef, the seafood, the chicken, the lamb, the pork, etc. But it's something that certainly adds some character and some spice to a menu. And And yeah, it's really been exciting to see the journey and to see the product on menus in clubs and pubs and even to see it, in going beyond gourmet retailers and seeing people willing to take it home and cook it and try it on barbecues. And one of our taglines back in those days was spoil yourself. And we really thought that if you had somebody over for a barbecue or for a dinner party, it was pretty standard, the types of things that you could expect to be served. But if somebody went to the trouble of serving you quail or spatchcock or duck or something along those lines, it was almost like, wow, we must be good friends. Look at the trouble that they've gone to, thinking that it was such an investment of time and it was so difficult to do this that they've gone to this trouble for us. But there's really no trouble at all. It's just taking away that psychology that people think it's difficult. So it's really been exciting to see how people have embraced it. But what's even more interesting now, Vanessa, is that we're working very closely with a gentleman called Luke Winder from Tartra Place. And he's all around this regenerative farming. And we've developed a very close working relationship and rapport with Luke. And Luke's the brainchild around the Maremma duck. And we have the exclusive rights of distributing that product in Sydney. And through that relationship, we've been looking at what else we can do together. And we're also doing a Maremma quail now. And so we grow the quail to a certain age, and then we provide them to Luke at 3 to 4 weeks of age. And then he takes them down to his farm down near the Wombian Caves. And it's a beautiful property. It's 100 acres and it's broken up into many different paddocks. And, they first send the pigs through the paddocks to tear it up. And it's like the natural plough and eat all the black bush and the rest of it. And then they bring the cattle across, and then after that they plant the seed and the oats or whatever the pasture is that they're trying to prepare, and then they put the ducks across, and the natural litter and manure from the ducks and the pastures that they grow. With the quail being that it's a game bird, so it's quite resilient, but it's quite small, and to be protected from its predators, they're in movable pods. So the birds are placed in these pods, and these pods are moved every single day. So they're getting fresh pasture and fresh grasses and really living in a natural habitat. And the feedback that we've had on these products are unbelievable. We won a gold medal for on the Delicious Awards this year for the Maremma quail.
Congratulations, that was amazing.
Thank you. And we'd only been in production 4 months when we put that entry in. And it's something that's still relatively small, where we're only working on, at the moment, we're down to about 200 a week because of COVID, but prior to that, we're at 500 a week. And it was one of the signature dishes on at Key Restaurant, and Key alone were taking 300 to 400 of these quail a week, which was great. So to see quail be reborn, and also from Game Farm's perspective, we're really passionate about the natural way in which products are grown, but at the same time, to be able to feed the community and the population, you've got to have a balance. So we're still very traditional in the way in which we farm our quail and our spatchcock and our corn-fed chicken, that we use the traditional sheds with the open side, so we can get natural ventilation and natural sunlight. Vitamin D is so important for the birds, as it is for humans as well, but definitely the birds and their health and their well-being. And to be able to venture into these types of partnerships where we can take that to a whole new level, and they're being pasture raised, is it's really exciting. And Luke is, if not the most passionate person I've met, he'd be very, very close. And it's definitely an introduction that I've got to make to yourself, Vanessa. You've got to meet this guy. You'd love him. You both have this amazing passion for the industry and great products. But we've got a number of projects that we're working on with Luke, and we're really excited about going down that venture as well.
And what does it mean to you now to have introduced the third generation to Game Farm?
Well, I'm pleased you've asked that question, because there is no greater reward in life than to be working with your children. And both Daniel and Ashley are very well educated, and they bring a real level of experience to the business from their studies. Daniel studied international business and marketing, and Ashley studied business as well as psychology. And so they've they're both very different in personalities, and both very complementary skills. So Daniel heads up our sales and marketing. He's our national sales and marketing manager, and Ashley, is general manager of operations. She started off in human resources. Yeah, she started off in human resources, which was a real passion of hers, and plus her psychology degree. But she saw very quickly where there was support required in the business, and she thought the best way to be able to get the support of those within those divisions was to be able to get her hands dirty and roll her sleeves up and to be able to get in the trenches with them and really formed a great opportunity. And both roles that Daniel and Ashley have undertaken and that they're currently in now have not been roles that I've created for them. They're roles that they've created for themselves. And the senior team within Game Farm have come to me and said, well, don't you think it's about time we gave Daniel this opportunity? And don't you think we should be doing this for Ashley? And have you seen what they're doing here and what's happening there? And so it's been so rewarding. And I can only imagine, my father and mother-in-law, Arminio and Olivia, looking at where the business is today and how the second generation have taken on their incredibly hard work and the foundations that they built and grew it, and then to be able to provide an opportunity for the third generation to come in and really make it their own. And, obviously, that my technological skills and IT skills aren't the greatest. When you told me we were doing a Facebook Live, I had to ask you what Facebook Live was. So it's great to be able to have my passion for innovation and to be able to take the business forward, but to be able to have their skill sets when it comes around technology, because technology and automation is really about where the future is. And if we don't learn to embrace change and especially automation and technology and how we can streamline the way we do things, business in 5 years' time, because gone are the days where everyone in business, their costs continually go up. And in the past, businesses have just naturally put their prices up to their customers to try and counter the pressures of prices going up within your business. Well, I think those days are gone, and we've got to look within our business and we've got to find opportunities of how we can reduce our costs and therefore be able to make more margin within our business by working smarter and through technology, innovation and automation, etc. So we can continue to offer a high-end quality product and a high-end quality service to our customers at the most economical rate that we can. And that's where I see some really exciting opportunities. And that's why we've invested heavily in the new hatchery and the new breeding operation with state-of-the-art technology. We're getting hatchabilities at 85, 86% instead of 72 and 74% now. The growing facilities that we've got. So these are things, and I guess COVID has been a very challenging time because our business has been down anywhere between 40 and 50%. On both occasions, and that's pretty challenging when you've still got so much produce coming at you. You've got full operational costs, but our sales and our distribution teams of the taps almost been turned off. In fact, 80% of our customers have been in lockdown, and the only reason that we've been able to maintain 50% of our revenue is because of the business that we have in the retail market and also online home deliveries. And to be able to navigate very challenging times and having your adult children in the trenches with you and in senior roles has been amazing. And whilst they've got great university degrees behind them, as you and I both know, we've gone on and done our studies within our employment and further education, but there's nothing better than an education that's on the job. And you think about the experience that they've gained for a 1 in 100 year event and the challenges and pressures that it puts on a business, and whether it's how you've got to divert your sales into different channels or how you manage. We had 70% of our staff coming out of affected LGAs. We needed exemptions and permits for them to travel. We're different to the beef industry and the lamb industry. We can't just press pause and keep them out at pasture or and process them in a month or 2 months' time. We have to process them the day the birds are ready. So it took a lot of doing. We've had our staff having a COVID test every 72 hours across all 4 sites. Every staff member, and that's taxing in itself. And it's the only way that we could keep ahead of the curve, because New South Wales Health were under so much pressure that they were taking the most aggressive course of action possible and closing facilities down and until people had 14 days isolation, etc. like that. We can't do that. It becomes an animal welfare issue. So yeah, it's having the kids in place and having their support and the passion, and they know the stories of their grandparents. They've seen what their own parents and families have done in the business, and yeah, their passion has been amazing. And whilst we're on the subject of family, you'll be very happy to know that Daniel and Charlotte had their second child on Friday.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
Thank you. So Zyla now has a baby brother, baby Ari. So unfortunately, as a result of lockdown, we won't get to see him until lockdown is open. But yeah, the latest addition to the family. So very exciting.
I can just imagine Grandma Linda, she'd be absolutely tickled pink.
She sure is. And, you know, she spends a lot of time looking after Zyla, which is really good to see, because both Linda and I and the game farm team worked really, really hard when our kids were young, and Linda didn't get that opportunity to be a mum. I mean, obviously she was still their mum and always will be their mum, but you know, when you're building a business and especially a demanding business like a vertically integrated one, you know, she didn't have the same opportunity. So being a young grandmother, it's really good to sit back and see the relationship she has with her granddaughter Zyla, and I'm sure what she's going to have with Ari. So yeah, it's really good. I love
that. That is so beautiful. So I want you to do me a big favor, Scott. Yes. I want you to start to put some pressure on Linda for her to create that cookbook.
I knew this was going to come up.
You and I are going to definitely work on that. It has to be a legacy for your grandchildren.
100%. And if I have a look at, you know, the cooking quality of Linda's mother, Olivia, and Linda as well, it'd be a shame, you know, not to document, you know, some of their, you know, traditional recipes and things like that. But as I talk to you, I'm just plugging myself in because I've noticed I'm running low on battery. So is that me talking too much, or?
I think, as I said in my introduction, you know, look, when you talk, there's a time to interject and there's a time to listen. And I just love listening to the way that you just put sense around nonsense, and you just bring things back to reality. And it's just such an honor to be able to sit here and have a conversation with you, knowing that the last 3 months haven't been easy. But you've got through it as you always do, and it's onwards and upwards. Tell me, how's the international trade? I know that we're out of time, but just really quickly, how's the international trade going at the moment with all of the challenges around China, etc.?
Yeah, it's certainly challenging. I mean, I've never really focused on the China market outside of Hong Kong and Macau, because I don't like to get sucked into something that's a huge market. It requires a huge amount of investment, and the rug can be pulled out from under you straight away. So I've never allowed, you know, the temptation of big orders and being able to grow a business overnight, because I know easy come, easy go. So I've always focused on the markets where you're building them. Obviously, COVID's been challenging for a lot of the international markets, and still is. You know, likes of Thailand have still got lockdowns, Vietnam, Cambodia. You know, Singapore are in and out of lockdown. You know, Hong Kong and Macau have had their challenges as well. We're probably currently trading at about 55% of our usual revenues into those markets, but our export business is a very well-oiled machine, and it's a very low cost base. And we do that with the intention, because obviously there's not a lot of margin when you're, you know, playing the role that we do play. And the reason that we can do what we do successfully and build, you know, alongside great brand builders or great brand producers to be able to build it internationally, is because if each brand had to develop an export business and have an export person that looked after that, it would be a considerable cost to each business. Whereas we've got that infrastructure, and we cater this through each of those brands. So it's a fraction of the cost for them. So for us, whilst it's down, we see a big future. And, you know, when things turn, you know, we're going to be ready. And, you know, I can't wait for markets to open up. One thing I can promise you is I won't be traveling as much as I used to. COVID's really made me realize how much of life I have sort of left behind. I mean, I've got great friendships from all different walks of my life, obviously family, but, you know, being able to have the time to slow down and smell the roses for a change has made me realize that, you know, the hectic life that I lived of going from airport to airport, hotel to hotel, and traveling. And then when I came back, I was only back for 10 days to 2 weeks at any one time before I was off again for a similar period of time. It was just go, 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 go. And, I was 51 a couple of months ago, and it's just like, holy crap, where are those 51 years gone? And, when I sit here and I talk about where I've been and what I've been doing to you, it makes me realize where the 51 years have gone. But, it's also time to not slow down, because I love it. And, if I'm not busy, I'd go crazy. But just to really value more time with family and friends, and also local industries as well. And, I've spent a lot of time, with chefs and people in the hospitality industry, more so internationally than I have domestically. And, I really want to get closer to our domestic market. And that's a great situation with Daniel. The relationships that he's built with chefs, and how chefs have been so open and welcoming Daniel into the industry. And, it's great to see the success that he's had and the following that he's got. And I can't be prouder to see what both Ashley and Daniel have achieved in their short term in the business. And, it excites me for where things can go in the future.
Well, they've certainly had great role models, from Emilio, Olivia to you and Linda. I mean, it's definitely a recipe for success. And as you say, values and morals do definitely play such an important role in life, in every walk of and every decision we make during our life. And your children are beautiful, and I have no doubt the Game Farm will go from success to success. And the beauty of our industry is, Scott, that they sniff out somebody that just isn't real. And the beauty that Daniel has is that he's sincere and he's honest. And you talked about trust before, and that just plays such a big role, and that's what chefs are looking for.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And he's got a great story, being the grandson of the founder. And
he's so proud of it. So proud of it.
Incredibly proud. And I think if you can have pride in yourself and be proud of what those before you have created, you develop a whole new level of respect. And that follows through, to your customers as well. And, I see what Daniel will do for his customers. And, I've never really been the face of Game Farm. I've always preferred to be at the back end of the business and the strategic development end. Don't get me wrong, I love spending time with customers, but, I'm not one for the hoo-ha and about building my own brand or my own profile. It's to me, the products and the business do the talking. And that's why I've employed people like yourself and Dom, and, great to have Daniel on board now, and Carl. Obviously Carl is a shareholder in the business as well. And, there's a lot of people in the industry that I'm sure probably don't know me that well, or don't even realize the involvement that I've had. And, that's suited me quite well, because I like to keep below the radar and just go on about doing what I do and let other people, have the limelight. I'm far more comfortable in that situation.
But you suit the limelight so well. And when I invited you to come and have a chat with me on this, and when you said yes, I was just like, oh my God.
I was honored.
But you like to stay, like you said, you like to stay just under the radar. It's where, but I just think that, thank you so much for taking the time today and sitting here and having a chat and sharing with everybody that's been listening your story and the story of Game Farm, and just the way that you deliver the message that you do is it's just so inspiring, and I'm so touched. Thank you.
I really appreciate it, Vanessa, and thank you very much. And as you say, these aren't normally the types of things that I do, but I just love your passion. I love what you've done through lockdown for the industry, and how you've brought people together. And it's so important for mental health and well-being. And you've contributed greatly. And as I've always said to you, it doesn't matter what you do in life, you'll always be successful. And to use your words, you're very genuine, you're very sincere, you're very caring. And you've got a massive following out there of really loyal supporters. And that's because of who you are and how hard you've worked. And, I know your times with us. I mean, you didn't matter what your title, how senior you were in the business. If there was something that needed to be done, you'd get down there and you'd get it done. And, it's been an absolute pleasure from the first day I met you. And, how could I refuse an opportunity to be a guest on your show and support all the really good things that you're doing? It wouldn't be fair. You've done so much for me, and I really wanted to be part of it.
Oh, you're lovely. Thank you. And please give Linda a big hug and a big kiss, and congratulations again on on the new baby. And I really look forward to being able to catch up with you all when we get out of this lockdown. And, you know, happy birthday to Craig as well, your brother. He's one of our favourite people. He turned 46 today. So happy birthday, Craig, if you're listening.
It's a real family affair. Not just the third generation, but also siblings, and yeah,
it is.
That's another story. I can tell you another story.
I tell you what,
family.
we could go on and on and on forever. And I just, I think you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it, Vanessa. You're too kind.
Okay, bye. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.